The White Sox may not win a whole lot of games in 2025, but that doesn't mean you can't have some reasonable hopes and expectations. I'll discuss some suggestions next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, this team's not going to win much again in 2025, but again, you can have some hopes and expectations in other areas, and I'll suggest those in the first segment. Then let's discuss why MLB.com is projecting Sean Burke to be this year's breakout player. And finally, let's wrap up my top 30 prospect recaps this offseason on today's Minor League Monday report. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so first, in terms of wins, let's just get this out of the way. I would be thrilled if the White Sox win 55 to 60 games. Clearly still sad. Very disappointing. Probably going to be the third year in a row that they lose 100 games, which isn't fun to endure. But I do think they can get back to 55 to 60 wins just to be regular bad, maybe even fun bad. It's possible also, given the Pythagorean record for 2024 was supposed to be 48 and 114. So that means the Sox actually found extra ways to lose games to only reach 41 wins. And it did happen. For example, you saw one of the most amazing game-robbing walk-off home run catches ever happen to the White Sox. You also saw things like Michael Kopech completely ignore his pitch plan and just try to throw the ball harder and harder right over the plate and get, balls squared up and walk-off hits, blowing leads left and right. And also, I would like to think, even though he's inexperienced, I'd like to think Will Venable is already a better manager and better at filling out a lineup card than Pedro Grifol. And I'd also like to think that the lineup isn't going to have so many automatic outs in it like it did last season. Remember, Pedro kept running out Martin Maldonado in April and May. Andrew Benintendi and Andrew Vaughn were horrifically awful to start the season. And they did not get benched barely at all. Benintendi finally went on IL when it revealed that he had an injury. But still, I would like to think that with all these moves that they've made, even though it's cost the Sox only $4.75 million, according to MLB trade rumors, and that was before the Josh Rojas signing, so not exactly the money that you should be spending coming off a historically bad season, at least it's been moves to get this team back to baseball factory settings. I've heard the cliche, it's kind of a reset to get this thing, get the White Sox back to default settings. And what are baseball default settings? Basically the old cliche too there, where you're guaranteed to win 60, you're guaranteed to lose 60. It's what you do with the other 42 that matters. The variance that happens in baseball. Usually you're going to have 60 opportunities to win outright, or you're going to run into a pitcher who's just having not his best stuff, or a bullpen that will blow leads, or a bad defensive game, because the Sox didn't run into that many. There wasn't much variance going in their direction. However, they still don't have enough instant offense in that lineup. Still plenty of question marks in the bullpen, and I'd even argue some question marks in the starting rotation now that Garrett Crochet is gone. I'd say it's more like, they're guaranteed to lose 102 games. It's what they do with the other 60 that counts. Do they have enough to win 60 games? And I think they do. But also, when I turn on White Sox baseball this year, I'm going to have different hopes and expectations, obviously. I'm not going to be expecting them to win a ton of games, but I'm going to have different areas that I'm going to have some hopes or expectations in terms of this team should have a better on-base percentage offense. And I wouldn't be shocked if they trade Luis Robert Jr. before the trade deadline. Wouldn't even shock me if he doesn't make the opening day roster, because they'll have traded him by then. And I'll get to that. But in terms of suggestions and expectations for hopes as well, my first big one, I want to see the Sox at least in the middle of the pack in the league in on-base percentage. If your major signings are going to be Mike Tauchman and Austin Slater and Josh Rojas, all guys who usually have on-base percentages over 300, And in the case of Tauchman, it's usually in the ideal good to great range of 360, 340. And if you're adding the modern day Greek god of walks, Chase Mydroth, yes, I say, labeled him that because I'm looking at his on base percentage and thinking of the movie in the book Moneyball when they talked about Kevin Youkilis and the Greek god of walks. Chase Mydroth is kind of in that area. I even made the bet with my buddy Bez. I think he's going to get 60 or 70 walks is the line I had it on. But if you're adding more guys that get on base, you're going to give yourself more opportunities to score runs. And this was an offense that had a minus 306 run differential. That's how bad they were at creating run opportunities and just getting runs in general. Minus 306. Okay? You got to score at least 600 runs to get to even the 99 losses or 100. And that's just me on a jump to conclusions in terms of that's what the Angels, Marlins, and Rockies did in 2024. They scored 600 more runs or more. Heck, even the 2023 A's, who won 50 games, scored 585 runs. So having more guys that can get on base, more opportunities to produce runs, even though, you have a big question mark on where are you going to get the RBI production from, where are you even going to get the instant offense from, at least you're giving yourself more opportunities, to score runs. Simple Moneyball concepts here. And I would like to expect and hope that the Sox at least score 584 to 640 runs total. That at least keeps yourself from being historically awful when you look at, the teams that obviously had 100 losses, the Marlins and the Angels, although they had 99, but even the A's, 585 runs. I think they had a minus 200 run differential too. You've got to stay away from that minus 306 differential. So that's why I'm also going to have some hopes and expectations when it comes to the starting rotation. Yes, there is no ace right now. I fully agree. But I like what I saw from Jonathan Cannon, Davis Martin, and Drew Thorpe in their outings last season. Remember, starting pitching was not the problem, except for, Chris Flexen and wasting time with Mike Clevenger and Brad Keller. And then, also some other, Michael Soroka getting some starts. That was a problem. But once you got those guys out of the way and you just lived with Chris Flexen, starting pitching was not the problem, even outside of Garrett Crochet. And my expectations for those three is at least give the White Sox a chance to win baseball games. Quality starts, as many as you can. 3 runs or less, no more than 5. And I do have some hopes that, Drew Thorpe could be a potential ace. As I keep saying, if those bone spurs were causing his decline in his last 2 starts that were just horrifically awful, he had, 6 very, very strong starts where he showed that, man, he could dominate with that changeup. And if those bone spurs were hampering his mile per hour, because I believe it was on the recap podcast, I forgot the name of the AA Barons former pitching coach. I think it was Melvin Eli or whatever. I'm sorry if I forgot the name, but he was saying if Thorpe can get back to throwing maybe his fastball at 94, that's going to really, really make his changeup just that more devastating. And then Sean Burke, he's got the potential to be a very good pitcher, and I'll discuss him being a potential breakout player in the next segment. But I do like what the Sox have with those 4 young pitchers to give them an opportunity to have that minus 200 run differential. Although I'd feel a lot more comfortable if they did sign one more veteran, whether it's Jose Quintana or Jacob Junis and his, future Sox did, say that they're in the running for Jacob Junis. I just feel more comfortable with those 2 veterans than I do with, say, Bryce Wilson, whose numbers support a better reliever, or Rule 5 pick Shane Smith, who I would say, why don't you just stash in the bullpen if you really like him? Maybe if everybody is starting to have some problems, you can give him a shot, but I would have him more ease him into the big leagues in low leverage situations. Although I do think when it comes to the bullpen, the front office is doing the right thing by trying to find relievers off the scrap heap. I actually do think that's a good thing that they're doing. But the key is you got to make sure you pick the right guys coming out of spring training. Because 37 blown saves by the bullpen and 56 blown leads by the pitching staff and entirely, on a whole, was in part because of poor bullpen roster construction. They just picked the wrong guys. They picked Dominic Leone and Brian Shaw over Jake Cousins and Jesse Chavez. those guys had very productive seasons. Dominic Leone was terrible even when he was healthy. Brian Shaw lasted 4 games and you DFA'd him. Tim Hill was like, I hate it here. Please DFA me. So they just got to make the right decisions. And at least you got a glimpse of, also, I think they have to have a shorter hook. Because, like, for example, I don't think Fraser Ellard is going to make the roster out of spring training. I just think they've brought in, Schuster and Gilbert and Boozer. I think those guys are ahead of him. But know that you have a reliable arm now that if one of those 3 do not perform, hook them. Go with the next guy. That was the other thing. They gave guys too long of runways, especially the veterans, that did not deserve it. So that's where I'm a little hopeful, and I have a lot of expectations. Shorter hooks because you have a little bit more pitching depth. Hitting wise, Luis Robert Jr. has to at least get back. The hope has to be he has to get back to at least the 2023 form. We cannot see that just absolutely awful 2024 version of him. And if he can avoid the injury, I think he does get back to that, especially if you can really communicate to him. Luis, yes, you are our most talented baseball player, but we don't need you to be the offense. Just be you, okay? Although I also expect him to be traded before the deadline. Because again, the timeline to getting back to being competitive and his fall from grace no longer match up to him being the cornerstone player. Yes, he's got 2 more options after this season, but he's not going to sign an extension. He's represented by Scott Boras. So by the time you maybe ideally are competitive by 2027, that'll be his last year of club control. It just doesn't match up anymore. And as he's shown, he's more like, I would even say, like, if he was on the Dodgers, he'd be a complimentary player. If he was on the Yankees, he'd be a complimentary player. And I'm not saying that there's anything bad about it. He's a very extremely talented player. It's just you've seen with the injuries and the inconsistency, he's more of your secondary supporting cast player. So I also think he might not even be making the opening day roster because I really think the front office is terrified that he's going to get hurt again and that they're going to have to pay him his $2 million buyout and make him go away for nothing, kind of like what they did with Yohan Moncada. So I think they're very motivated to move him for something significant. So that would be my expectation there. In terms of, it would not surprise me also if Colson Montgomery, Kyle Teal, and Edgar Carroll, unless they rake in spring training, I have a feeling they're going to start. My expectation is that they're going to start the season in AAA. And it's just not a bad thing because, again, this team isn't going anywhere. So you don't have to completely rush them. If there's a hint of struggling at spring training, let them iron out some stuff at Charlotte if need be. But also do not underestimate this owner's ability to play politics. And actually want them to debut maybe a little bit later just because it's a gate attraction. That would not shock me in the very least. It wouldn't shock me to see Hagen Smith eventually debut this year. And he is on that timeline, but it wouldn't shock me if they brought him up in August to draw some tickets. Also, would not shock me if those 3 do debut. This is my hope. And at least 2 or even 3 all end up in the top 5 in Rookie of the Year voting. That's got to be the hope. When Teal, Carroll, and Montgomery do debut and play, hopefully a season enough to qualify, you would love to see those guys be in the top 3 of the Rookie of the Year voting, because then you definitely have hope. Then you're pointed in the right direction. You're going forward. And I think Carroll can be that stud hitter. Just basically on what I've seen him consistently do in the minors. I think, again, my expectation for Colson is somewhere in between his floor and his ceiling. And, Kyle Teal, I think he's going to be a very good baseball player. That should be the hopes, but obviously be patient. They're going to go through their ups and downs. And again, it would not stun me at all if they started the season at AAA just because, hey, we got to draw some fans in May or June. So, would say, though, I'm very concerned about the defense, at least infield. Outfield, you're fine. Even if you have Luis Robert Jr., if he's not traded, you're going to have Luis Robert Jr., Mike Tauchman, Slater. They catch everything, or they catch a lot. You're fine in the outfield. I'm just going to be a little curious to see how Meidroth, if he is the starting second baseman, they say his limited range. If Montgomery is eventually your shortstop, how's he going to field the position when they say he might be more of a third baseman? Lenyn Sosa obviously is not the best fielder as we've seen. But at least Rojas provides a good glove. Not sure about Vargas or Ramos either. So defensively, infield, a little concern there. That would be my my one concern that I'd have as a suggestion. Well, in terms of which player to hope breaks out in 2025, MLB.com's White Sox beat reporter Scott Merkin has pitcher Sean Burke as the team's potential breakout star. Let's discuss if that's the correct player to select next on Locked On White Sox. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And I always keep telling you, the money lines, over-unders, and spreads, they're fun to play. But if you want to win big, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures are the way to go. And even if the Chiefs do win the Super Bowl, they're at plus 350. So that could triple your money depending on how much you put down if Kansas City three-peats. Say you put $10 on it, you just won $35. $1,000, that could pay out at $3,500. You should look at their futures for who's going to win the Super Bowl. Really good value there. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, I can't wait to see if Sean Burke can become something more than a brief glimmer of hope, and that's what he was. He was a glimmer of hope at the end of the season. 3 outstanding starts in September. And then also, his big league debut, 3 innings of relief. He looked really, really good. In 4 outings, 19 innings, struck out 22 batters, had a 1.42 ERA. He was pretty much untouchable as he only gave up just 3 earned runs. And that's one of the reasons why to have excitement for the starting rotation. However, I'm interested to see how he does once baseball comes for him, because baseball comes for every young player. What do I mean by that? Teams make adjustments. They get more tape. They get more of a, heat maps, all that stuff on a pitcher. Same thing with a hitter. They get the trends. They get all the stuff. And then they make the adjustments. Then they try to exploit the weaknesses. And then the key is, can he make the adjustment back? An MLB White Sox beat reporter, Scott Merkin, who I'm actually working on getting on the show. We were trying to do something this week. Don't think it's going to happen because he's in Vegas. And but I am trying to get him on the show. But he projects Burke will be this year's breakout player for the White Sox. And I think he made the right choice. I mean, yes, you could go with prospects that are much more exciting in Colson Montgomery or Carroll or Kyle Teal. I'm also high on Chase Mydroth. Maybe Lenine Sosa's strong September was a preview of things to come. And what if Miguel Vargas, the greatest what if he figures out how to hit fastballs? But I think Burke is the safe choice for a breakout player because he's got the goods. He's got the stuff. In terms of Burke being a breakout player, here's what Merkin wrote. Burke is just 2 off seasons removed from ranking number 5 among White Sox prospects, according to MLB Pipeline. He dealt with right rotator cuff tendonitis, limiting Burke to 9 rough starts with AAA Charlotte in 2023. He didn't exactly conquer the minors over 19 starts in 24. Once the right-hander reached the majors, albeit over 4 limited appearances, 3 starts, Burke thrived with a 1.42 ERA and 22 strikeouts in 19 innings. Burke also has shown a level of bravado, a level of confidence on the mound where he seems to embrace the big moment. Although there should be a competition for this final spot in the rotation, Burke could take off with a regular opportunity every 5th day. So I liked how he did point out that Burke, did not exactly light the minors on fire, had a 4.62 ERA at AAA, but I think he can continue to at least be that 3 to 4.5 ERA pitcher based on, first of all, the guy's a massive human being at 6'6". And the other thing is you can't really look at any White Sox pitcher numbers at AAA besides strikeouts, considering Charlotte's Park is a bandbox. It's basically like Coors Field without the thin air. It's just how it's configured. You're going to get, it's definitely a hitter-friendly ballpark. So that's why I keep maintaining too, the Sox have to use Charlotte more as a parking lot for their pitchers, meaning you have to have your depth starters there, like Touki Toussaint. That's a perfect place to put Touki. Or any prospects who are close to getting to the big leagues. You just don't have any room for them on the big league roster. Otherwise, develop your pitchers at AA. And then obviously if you have a spot, promote them like you did with Drew Thorpe. Otherwise, you parking lot them in Charlotte. And I do think that's what kind of happened to Burke. I think his stuff translates well to the big leagues. It just did not play well at Charlotte. And I think if you give him the proper runway as a starter, especially as a fourth starter, I think he's got a chance to thrive. So long as he makes the adjustments once the adjustments are made to him. Because again, you only have 4 starts on it. There's only 4 starts of tape. And he was really, really good. Or 3 starts of tape and 1 3-inning relief. And he was really, really good in that. So I don't know how much you're going to see in that. But I definitely want him to be the 4th starter instead of the 5th starter. That's my fear, is they'll put like Bryce Wilson, who's much better in the bullpen, as the 4th starter. And then you have Burke there as the 5th starter. But I'd rather leverage Wilson's ability to be a better bullpen pitcher, and also Shane Smith to hide him. Because remember, you don't need a 5th starter until like mid-April. So I want to make sure Burke gets plenty, gets a couple of starts to start the season right away. Let's keep going. Let's not pause his momentum. The offseason paused him, but let's get him back on the mound. Let's get him back to thriving, making sure that he's a good pitcher. And I want to see him maybe even go to Charlotte if he's the 5th starter, just to keep him stretched out. Although in terms of projections, the Zips projections are not out on FanGraphs, so you got to use FanGraphs steamers. They got him making 33 appearances with 23 starts, a 4.67 ERA, a 4.84 FIP, 21% strikeout percentage, and finishing with a 1.1 F4. But remember, Garrett Crochet came out of nowhere to become an ace. And I don't think Burke is going to potentially be an all-star, but he could fit the profile of being a very, very good pitcher, again, based on his size, his arm angle, his stuff. Although his fastball is more at 95, but his prospect scouting report has him at 97. Sometimes that he can reach. And I'm just excited to see what happens with his career. Because the prospect scouting report always, has his ceiling as a middle of a rotation pitcher, and his floor as a multi-inning reliever. So I'm very excited to see what Sean Burke can do, and I think Scott picked the right guy to be a potential breakout. Burke is also still considered the Sox 30th ranked prospect because he still hasn't graduated from the list yet. And let's wrap up my minor league Monday recaps of the White Sox top 30 prospects with the rest of rundown on number 21 through 29, and we'll get to that next on Locked On White Sox. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. And one of my favorite memories recently was taking my daughter to the Brewers and Sox game. She loved eating ice cream, going to that little kids area where they got the slides, having a whole bunch of fun. And she loved the baseball. Well, mostly she loved the ice cream in the kids area, but it was fun to spend a day at the ballpark with my little girl. And if you love going to live events, I recommend using the Gametime app. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I'm always checking out the Gametime app for deals to my beloved Marquette hoops. I try to convince my wife to buy maybe a ticket here or there to see my alma mater, especially tomorrow night's Georgetown game and Marquette game. They got tickets for as low as $1. Yeah, you can find those types of deals. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today, because what time is it? Game time. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all my everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fan friends to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts. This show is all available on all major podcast platforms. Feel free to leave a 5-star review. Would love to get that rating from 4.5 up to a little bit more. Let's that. Again, we're building a great community. We're zeroing in on 2,200 subscribers, so let's build that up as well. Hope you had a great weekend as well. Mine was great. Bears won. As you know, I live behind the cheddar curtain. I got I'm walking around Wisconsin with my Bears gear on. I'm walking around proud. I don't care if they only dropped one draft pick spot. I'm fully prepared for them to bring back Ryan Poles. But man, that was a great way, because it was like, oh, here they come. They're going to rip my heart out. Packers are going to rip my heart out. And then the unthinkable happened. The Bears actually came back. So, all right. So right off the bat, in terms of my minor league Monday recaps, I've gone through the top 30 prospects, up to 20. Last week I went through Jarrell Perez and Samuel Zavala. This week I'm going to wrap up 21 through 30, or 21 through 30. Right off the bat, though, not going to review number 22 prospect pitcher Blake Larson and number 26 prospect Nick McLean. They were just drafted and they didn't get even into a complex league game. So there's not really a whole lot to review. I kind of went over, I had Elijah Evans from Future Sox and Just Baseball on months ago to talk about who they got in the draft. So you can, go back through there and find that. But otherwise, there's not much to review in terms of what they did this year. Hopefully they get to the complex league and single A by the time the season ends. Nick Nastrini, he is ranked number 21 as he continues to slide down the rankings. I talked about him a ton on this show since he did get some big league innings. Really for Nastrini, again, long-term big league career hinges on can he command at the big league level. That's what it comes down to. He threw way too many balls. So if he can command his pitches at the majors, he does have a shot to be a starter or a long reliever. If he can't, well, he's a journeyman 48, he's a journeyman 4A player, eventually coaching pitching somewhere once he hangs it up. In terms of Tyler Schweitzer, Seth Keener, Aldrin Batista, and Juan Carla, you got to wonder if you're looking at the team's future bullpen there. Like those four being a core of the future bullpen. Because those are the Sox prospects at number 23, number 24, number 25, and number 29. Then you got Casey Saki, I think it's Saki. Is he going to shoot up the rankings next, this season? If he can hit, and does Wilfred Veras get to the big leagues this year with his power potential? That is your prospects number 27 and number 28. So Schweitzer's a southpaw, former fifth-round pick in 2022, made 9 starts with Winston-Salem, and then got to Double-A Birmingham, where he made 16 starts, had an ERA over 4, but in his final 5 starts, he did have 2 where he gave up no runs. Does have to work on his command, though. Keener, he was a third-round pick in 2023. Sox are trying him as a starter after being a reliever in college. He did make 14 starts at Kannapolis with a 3.36 ERA. Did get to high A Winston-Salem. Got 2 starts, didn't go well. 12.6 ERA. Batista, he came to the Sox as part of a small deal with the Dodgers as the Sox sent some international bonus pool money. 21-year-old right-hander. Started 17 games in Kannapolis with a 3.51 ERA. Then did even better in 5 starts at Winston-Salem with a 1.4 ERA. Kerala came in the Kenyon Middleton trade with the Yankees, and this is a guy that if you look at his ERA, when he started out in the Dominican Complex League with the Yankees in 2019 to now, talk about improvement. He was at a 7.59 ERA. Last season, 3.71 ERA. Clear showing of, you take an international player and you mold them. And then in the case of the Yankees, you use those lottery tickets, trade them away to get something that can help you now. And I think he could be in the pen, sometime this year. With all this pitching depth, I think you're seeing some of those guys, though, that I've just talked about, either eventually getting dealt away as pieces to maybe help you maybe get some more bullpen help, then to flip for additional assets, or eventually find you pieces that can help you down the road, that type of stuff. But, with the rotation, kind of these guys being more lower down on the list, there's a chance that they can still skyrocket up. But otherwise, I think at some point you're going to have to look at, are these guys going to just be bullpen arms just because is there a spot for them in any rotation? And there's nothing wrong with that, as I always say, because one big problem this franchise has had when it comes to spending the limited money that the owner gives them is they didn't spend it wisely the last time. They spent it on a bunch of bullpen arms. Don't spend it on bullpen arms. Don't. Draft and develop pitching. It's cheaper that way. Saki was the Sox 4th-round pick that actually got to Winston-Salem. He had a 290, 333, 391, 398 slash line with 2 home runs. Veras was feared to possibly be taken in the Rule 5 draft. Wasn't. He is considered one of the best pure power bats that they have in the system. 424 slugging percentage and 16 home runs at Birmingham. And you do got to wonder if he hits some dingers in Charlotte, does he get called up as the Sox could use some pop? Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball Guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss what these common themes we keep seeing with the White Sox moves this offseason. Kind of want to discuss that. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the hopes and expectations to have in 2025. Sean Burke being the breakout player for the Sox, and today's Minor League Monday report. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.